This is Valley News Live at 10.
The Minnesota State Patrol is investigating a fatal crash involving a school bus in southern Minnesota. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Reed Gregory.
And I'm Zoe Jones. The crash occurred on Interstate 90 in Foster Township around 8:40 p.m. on Saturday. The patrol said the bus was heading eastbound and a driver in a Ford Mustang was going westbound when the two vehicles collided.
According to State Patrol, the driver of the Mustang was killed. A 79-year-old driver, a 24-year-old woman, and 7 teenage girls suffered serious injuries. The patrol did not give any additional information about the Mustang's driver.
One woman has been charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in White Earth, Minnesota. 46-year-old Carol Jean Nelson of rural White Earth was charged on Friday, August 25th.
According to police, on March 13, 2023, 35-year-old Jude Dwayne Beauchamp Jr. of rural White Earth was found dead. The medical examiner determined the cause of death was fentanyl toxicity. During the investigation, it was determined that shortly before his death, Nelson sold him fentanyl, which ultimately led to his overdose.
No other information has been released from the White Earth Police Department regarding the case at this time. Now let's switch gears and check in with First Alert Storm Team Shelby Bertowski for a look at our forecast. Shelby, how is it?
Well, Zoe and Reed, most of us are still experiencing some slightly breezy conditions. Taking a look at the Dakota Magic Skycam, but otherwise for our peak winds today alone, most of us had gusts into those 20s. So we had gusts up to 24 miles an hour in Grand Forks, 25 here in Fargo. Now we also did have some breezier winds out near Valley City, with your peak wind gusts today sitting at 31 miles an hour, where it's a little calmer along the international border at 18. But otherwise, we're still experiencing those calm winds as we speak, with calm winds in Roseau and Devil's Lake. Those winds out of the east at 6 miles an hour in Thief River, with those temperatures finally dipping into those 60s. Some of us, like here in Fargo, are still in those 70s as we have a patch of warm air, but we're still experiencing a temperature change. We are 16 degrees warmer here in Fargo than what we were at 10 p.m. yesterday alone, whereas areas like Bismarck are 13 degrees warmer, and Oaks, because we have another warm up arriving later this week with more wildfire smoke returning, and I'll have your full forecast for you coming up in a few moments.
All right, Shelby, thank you. 3 people yesterday were killed inside of a Dollar General store by a gunman who police say acted on a, quote, disgusting ideology of hate.
Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters says all 3 victims, 2 men and 1 woman, were black. He said the shooter, a white man in his early 20s, first tried to enter a historically black university in Jacksonville, but was turned away by security.
He then put on tactical gear before opening fire. Rob Kirkpatrick shares the latest developments in the case.
Tragedy unfolded on the streets of Jacksonville Saturday when police say a gunman opened fire at a Dollar General store in a racially motivated attack.
At 1:18 p.m., he texted his father and told his father to check his computer. At 1:53 p.m., the shooter's family members called the Clay County Sheriff's Office. By that time, he had already began shooting in Jacksonville.
The gunman, who police identified as 21-year-old Ryan Christopher Palmetter, killed 3 people, and police say he clearly targeted black people. The suspect used racial slurs and left behind writings to his parents, the media, and federal agents, outlining what the sheriff called his, quote, disgusting ideology of hate. The shooting occurred on the same weekend of the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, and Martin Luther King's granddaughter says the dream is still not fulfilled.
60 years ago, my grandfather delivered his dream, his message, and that was a call to action. And 60 years later, the dream still has not been fulfilled.
Palmetter put on a bulletproof vest and mask and went into the Dollar General store and started shooting before turning the gun on himself, according to police.
Anyone who enters into a store and does this to perfectly innocent people, one doing his job, a couple of customers, is baffling to me. It's very difficult for me to watch.
Members of the community, including Jacksonville's mayor, say the hate has to end.
It's too much. It's too often. We keep going down the same path.
This makes no sense. I am very, very angry right now.
The sheriff identified the victims as a 52-year-old woman who was shot in her car 11 times, a 19-year-old male Dollar General employee, and a 29-year-old man who was shot as he entered the store.
President Joe Biden issuing a statement today strongly condemning what took place yesterday. In his statement, Biden says, in part, quote, white supremacy has no place in America and hate must have no safe harbor.
The president noting that the fatal shooting came on the same day as an event marking the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. President Biden also extending his heartfelt condolences, saying, quote, "Jill and I are praying for the victims and their families, and we will grieve with the people of Jacksonville."
And as the nation mourns this incident, residents of Jacksonville came together late today to grieve the 3 lives lost in the attack. City and state leaders were among the speakers at a prayer vigil late today, and residents are still trying to make sense of the tragedy.
Among those in attendance, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his wife, they were there, and they faced a cold welcome and boos from the crowd. However, a member of Jacksonville's City Council tried to quell the reaction, saying this was a time to put parties aside. New tonight, we now know the name of the male who was injured yesterday after police say he was driving his Harley-Davidson northbound on Walsh County Road 12, approximately 2 miles northwest of Park River.
The driver, a 31-year-old male, was identified as Casey James Moe. Moe was ejected from his bike, sustaining serious injuries. He was not wearing a helmet at the time of the crash. And we also now know the names of 2 deceased individuals that were involved in a motorcycle accident in Grand Forks County yesterday as well. According to reports, a Harley-Davidson was being driven by 59-year-old Timothy Donald Olson of Drayton, North Dakota.
Olson was riding with a convoy when the accident occurred, which ejected both him and the other victim, who was identified as 44-year-old Nicole Marie Brown of Drayton, North Dakota. Reports indicate that neither rider was wearing a helmet. And 3 U.S. Marines were killed in an aircraft crash off the coast of Australia earlier today.
A total of 23 Marines were on board the Osprey aircraft when it went down in Melville Island just after 9 a.m. Officials said they had been flying in support of a routine training exercise, Predator's Run, and that no Australian personnel were involved in the crash.
5 other Marines were transported to the Royal Darwin Hospital in serious condition, and recovery efforts are still ongoing. The cause of the incident is under investigation.
And charges against former President Donald Trump in Fulton County, Georgia face a major test tomorrow.
District Attorney Fani Willis will lay out the details of her anti-racketeering case against Trump, his chief of staff Mark Meadows, and 17 other co-defendants at a federal hearing on Monday morning. It's the first time some arguments will be made in court about the 4 criminal cases brought against Trump just this year.
The hearing will center on Meadows' motion to move his case to federal court out, but it could end up acting as a mini trial that determines the future of Fulton County's case against the former president. Now, Meadows is one of several defendants who have filed to move their cases from Georgia State Court, and Trump is expected to file a similar motion.
But some legal experts say if U.S. District Judge Steve Jones grants requests to move the prosecution, it does not ultimately doom Willis's case, which is expected to be a long and complicated series of procedural fights. And since being processed at an Atlanta jail last Thursday, Donald Trump's campaign says they've raised more than $7.1 million. That number is first reported by Politico. Now, according to a source, the former president raised $4.18 million the first day of his arrest. His campaign immediately started selling merchandise with Trump's mugshot. A Trump campaign official said the campaign has raised nearly $20 million in the past 3 weeks, which covers the time since the former president's indictment and arraignment in Washington to his surrender at the Fulton County Jail in Georgia. And some new evidence potentially vital in determining the cause of those deadly Lahaina fires. Hawaiian Electric Company acknowledged an exchange with attorneys. 2 days after the wildfire devastated the town of Lahaina, a group of attorneys notified the utility of anticipated litigation. The attorneys asked that all electrical equipment that may relate to the origin of the fire, including things such as power poles, lines, and conductors, all be preserved. An attorney for Hawaiian Electric responded saying some potential evidence may have been compromised during the firefight. The court issued an interim discovery order on August 18th, directing Hawaiian Electric to preserve and protect all physical evidence within a defined area and refrain from destructive testing. Several days after the fires ignited, a class action lawsuit was filed alleging Hawaiian Electric failed to de-energize power lines ahead of the fire despite high winds and red flag warnings. The cause of the fire has yet to be determined. And still to come on Valley News Live, if you're in the market for a home as a first-time buyer, well, things could be looking up. We'll have details after the break.
And peak temperatures today for most of us in North Dakota got into those 80s, except Cavalier, you were still sitting in those 60s. We have another chance at some wildfire smoke on Monday throughout your day, with more chances of some rain showers and even a thunderstorm or two later in the week. But I'll have your full forecast coming up next.